airline pilot not showing up drunk makes sense.
Yeah.
But who I happen to spend my 4th of July with, why should my employer have any right to control this at all?
But I mean, what it comes down to is that whenever you have this discretionary language, essentially the decision gets made by regulatory bodies and by courts, and in general, you know, the general public has less they have less access to it in practical terms, to what develops, to what the de facto rules are.
So who knows what the NPRM is in relation to net neutrality? It's the Notice for Proposed Rulemaking, which the FCC put out around the beginning of 2010 for its net neutrality, the revision of its net neutrality policy. And so about the middle of 2010, Verizon filed, I think it was August, Verizon filed a suit against the FCC's ruling, saying that they weren't legally qualified to be making regulations around net neutrality. And I believe they won. There's a story about it in the document. But so it's very much a fight that has been going on, and a fight in which there need to be active people who are active in understanding the issues involved. So we went over the rules that define net neutrality. Below that, you can see there are 3 exceptions that the FCC has admitted to these rules, and
Addressing traffic that is unwanted.
Spam, I assume.
Yeah, I assume.
These are the 3 exceptions which the FCC has allowed pretty much in response to the broadband corporations trying to squash their efforts. I went to the very end of the document where there are extra resources. It has the 3 rules that provide the basic definition of net neutrality according to the FCC right now, and then there are 3 exceptions based on what the broadband providers have said the FCC needs to do to be realistic about their business and how it functions. So first, the broadband companies have said we need to be able to manage our networks. Our customers want the services that they want, and we need to be able to regulate how information is flowing in order for our customers to get it when they want it. And so that's what the first exception is about. Then the second one is addressing the fact that, which we touched upon a little bit earlier, mobile broadband is different in a lot of ways from internet broadband, and so there need to be special considerations around the rules that are put into place about how information flows between mobile phones, in mobile phones versus the internet. And then the third exception is about specialized services, which probably, how many people know what voice over IP is? Yes. Okay.
Skype.
And they call them specialized services or last mile, final mile services. And on the FCC page, does anybody want to share what they've heard about voice over IP and its relationship to other access to other internet services.
It works.
It's cheaper.
Voice over IP can be used, you have a switch that will permit the replacement of regular landline telephones in a data center, an office building, a government building, school, whatever. And basically that switch transmits out through the internet circuits that route the data, voice over IP, to its endpoints, and you can communicate at a fraction of the cost. You're not paying the tariffs that you pay the telecom companies. So it's going to become, it's already become popular. I mean, people already use Google Voice, people use Skype for voice calls, and a whole bunch of other, but there's regular Cisco switch equipment for that. There's other brand name equipment that's specifically designed to replace the old switchboards, Centrex systems that we used to have in office buildings that cost a fortune compared to what this costs. But the issue with this is you have to have enough bandwidth to make it work properly if you're using a lot of phone lines.
This is actually one of the first issues I've heard of in the Redstone net neutrality, probably 5 or 6 years ago. The issue being that ISPs were starting to roll out their own voice over IP services, and the worry was that they'd start blocking competitor services, so you'd have no choice but to use theirs.
Yeah, I haven't seen that happen yet, but I know most of the broadband providers have their own VoIP service. Comcast digital voice is VoIP, even though it doesn't go over the internet itself. It goes over the network, but it goes into their switching centers.
There's a lot of problems with that.
What?
It's just when a lot of people are working out of their home offices using Vonage, and worked beautifully for like 3 or 4 years, and then Comcast started rolling out some new service, and all the people on Comcast, all of a sudden their Vonage wasn't working right.
Yeah, one of the other things that goes along with that is where Comcast is starting to watch how much data you're transferring per month, whatever, and if you're on a streaming service such as Netflix or any of those, your data rate goes way up. If you've got data volume, data rate, so that if you've got 6 people in the neighborhood doing streaming service, all of a sudden your available bandwidth goes down.
There are a few stories in here. Once you have access tomorrow or whenever about that. And then one under this first heading, net neutrality through the FCC's eyes. Let's see, who is this one? Julius Panachowski. Put forth what he calls a third wave plan, which you can read about here. It's a compromise between the FCC and he promotes it that way, between the FCC and the broadband companies. And it involves measuring the data that flows through the internet, and let's see. The article explains it better than I can.
Can you enlarge the text?
Yeah.
it seems to hinge on the classification of broadband service as either a quote telecommunications service or as an information service,
Right.
which is some kind of FCC distinction I don't really know.
Okay. I've just made the connection of the Title I, Title II.
Hmm.
My take on this is, it's arguing about the competitiveness in the same sense, like in the auto industry, they were saying that standard-sized roads are damaging to the competitiveness, but with the automobiles.
Yeah, but
If we had different sized roads all over the place, you wouldn't be able to buy a car that would go everywhere.
Without buying the
And the
one
same
that was
broadband
so
industry,
small.
There need to be standards on broadband, which is being opposed by these people who want competition at that level.
well, that gets a whole different issue of technical standards. I mean, for example, the U.S. rail system is standardized on 4 foot 8.5 inch gauge. It's a good thing. Australia just recently finally managed to standardize their country from 3 different gauges. They had a real mess. And Europe has all sorts of. There's even interesting documentaries where you reach the border of Poland, and you have to basically take the whole car up off the wheels and put it down on a different set of wheels.
But because the Russians deliberately
Yes.
and had settled on a different gauge so
Yes.
that the Germans couldn't use the tracks to invade
Yeah.
Russia.
2 meters, it's more stable.
What the,
Maybe,
It
that
is,
was the
but-
reason.
what the Army did in World War II is, the Army had their own railroad.
In the Civil War, they had to.
Yeah, and what the Army's rolling stock in World War II had adjustable wheel widths.
Huh. Yeah, because they had to in Europe.
And I've actually seen them because I went, when I first went into the Army, I had my training at Fort Eustis, Virginia, since I was transportation corps. And we had a railroad there, it was called the MG&B Railroad, the Main Gate and Back Railroad. But it's a transportation corps that actually runs the railroad, and that's what they use to train them. And all these military rail vehicles, the engines and everything else, were adjustable for width because of the different widths where they would have to operate. And this also was done in World War II.
Dynamically adjustable?
Excuse me?
Dynamically adjustable? So if the track changes width.
I don't think that's
They would
very
be
good.
today.
Actually, I think
So anyway, this so-called telecommunications service
Mm-hmm.
versus information service, that's definitely an FCC terminology. I don't understand. What does it mean that you're a telecommunications service, and what does it mean if you're an information service?
telecommunications has got a whole tax structure already there. Information
things,
service
yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, Comcast or whatever, doesn't like the idea of being a telecommunications service.
The real distinction
Because
is
it's more regulated.
the telecommunications status means that you have to be a common carrier. It means you're not responsible for the data transferred over your network, first thing, which is good for them. But the second thing is they can't mess with the data going over their network.
Yeah.
Just like the phone company isn't responsible if I make a call to, and plan a terrorist act.
Do you think the FCC is aiming toward a tax per byte architecture?
They've got to go to some kind of a profit model. Phone already has a profit model. You're on the phone for so many minutes, you get a bill.